If you think you can coast into 2026, think again. Insights EDU is coming February 17th to the 19th, 2026, and it's taking over Fort Lauderdale for a beachfront experience. It's the event that will flip your marketing and enrollment strategy on its head. 3 days, over 65 expert speakers, and over 40 sessions. Zero fluff. Just powerhouse strategies from the most anticipated platforms like Google, Reddit, Meta, MIQ Digital, and the most forward-thinking schools in the nation. You'll get the real wins, the bold ideas, and the hands-on tactics to grow programs, drive engagement, and create the student experience today's modern learner demands. The question is, are you ready to lead, or will you get left behind? Mark your calendar, bring your team, and secure your spot at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15, 2025. See you in Fort Lauderdale.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. You must know my voice by now if you listen. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you on another episode. And before I get to my guest today, I want to remind you of a few things that I continually remind all of our listeners of, but I have to do it because it's important to us. Number one, remember that we've taken a part of our website and we've turned it into a way to publish articles for our colleagues in and around and across higher education called EdUp Editorials. So if you have something you want to write, maybe it's about a new innovation at your college, something that you're passionate about, new programs releasing, we created this part of our website to publish these articles to push out to our global audience, because at times the trade publications don't want some of the stories that we feel, nothing against them, but there's a negative tinge to it these days. Nobody wants to publish those articles. We do. We want to know what's innovative in higher ed, and we want to push that out. You could submit those articles to you can submit it to me, or to Elvin, or to edupexperience@gmail.com. You know how to find us. We're pretty easy. So write your articles about what's good. What's good, ladies and gentlemen? That's a question we should be asking. And push those. We publish them and push them out to our global audience. So that's that. And hope you take us up on it. And I'll continue to remind you till the end of time. So you have to listen to me say that at the beginning of every episode. And now I'm going to get to my guest. And he's got a lot to say. There's a lot happening in and around higher education, and at this college, we want to find out exactly what I just said. What's good? Ladies and gentlemen, let's get him on the mic. He's Dr. Michael Hammond. He's the president at Gordon College. Mike, welcome to an EdUp. Mike, how are you?
Hey, Joe. Thank you. Happy to be with you, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Well, we always like to say to our audience, there's probably somebody out there amongst these listeners that hasn't heard of Gordon College before. So let's set the stage for us. Where are you? Who do you serve? How do you serve them?
Great. Yeah, that's probably true. We're not necessarily a household name, but have a really loyal alumni base, coast to coast and all over the world. Gordon was founded in 1889, so 136 years. Based in the inner city of Boston, down in the Fenway area for many years. And then we moved to the North Shore in the middle of the 1950s. We're really kind of unique in that in the Northeast part of the United States, we're really the only Protestant liberal arts Christian college that does what we do in our mission. There have been a few schools that were sister institutions that have closed in the last few years. And so we're kind of the last school standing with that mission, and we love that. And not that other schools have closed, but it really shapes our mission to be where we're located, to have that long legacy, and to be still working and going strong 136 years in.
Nailed it.
You said a lot there. You said it nonchalantly, but it's important to recognize, number one, you've sustained yourself through rocky roads.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that too. There have been other institutions that have closed, that have a Christian mission, for whatever reason. Could have been board, could have been business management, so on. I don't think it's lack of interest, because I've seen, in doing just this podcast, where, I don't know, a few years back, everybody was really concerned about the Christian or religiously affiliated institutions, and then that pendulum swung in the complete other direction, and you saw this enrollment surge. So what has kept you going when others might have not succeeded?
Well, and you know, what I would add to that is in the long view of higher education in the United States, there are a lot of schools that maybe started with that mission and then it kind of morphed into something different. And so we're really proud of the fact that, and I'll say more about our founder and kind of the original vision for how we do it, but we're really proud that we've stayed true to that. I do think that you're right. There is a great demand. We've all heard of the demographic cliff. I'm sure you've talked to many people about it and how it affects them. We're in the northeast part of the U.S. And yet, I saw a statistic the other day, if you kind of captured, let's call it the I-95 corridor from Portland, Maine down to Washington, D.C., if you could just pull that out, and if it was its own nation state, it would be the fourth highest gross domestic product in the world. So there's great money resources, there's great earning, there's great business opportunities, and there's great population centers here. And so even though there is a shift, and we talk about the birth rates, we're very aware of that, we know that for a small school like Gordon College, there's a great demand of Christian church-going families in the Northeast, in that kind of I-95 corridor and beyond, who are looking for that transformative learning experience, not just to educate the mind and not just to train for jobs and be equipped for technology and how the world's changing, but education of the soul, mind and heart joined together toward Christian service to the world. That's what we are really excited about. That animates our mission now throughout our history.
Do you think that the rise of AI and, the machines taking over all of our aspects of our human lives, or people think, doomsday about it, some people are embracing it. Do you think there's a shift towards the humanization? Do you see that students are more interested in connecting to the religious principles of humanity and, trust and, God and all of that in response to technology, or was it there anyway? Are we trying to balance ourselves out?
No, that's a brilliant question. And AI has maybe brought a more acute attention level to this, but certainly, we've all been familiar with the way that technology and even the rising generation of college students today who've digital natives, they've been brought up with access to smartphones and technology. It's shaped the way that their minds function. It's not just habits. It's actually, psychologists are studying the way that it's changed the way that their brains function and the way that they use their time. And those habits of being fully integrated into technology 24/7, they really do have some drawbacks to it. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, I think whether it's an exclusively Christian approach to viewing those things, or sort of more attention within the conversations we're in and the business world and beyond, it's attention to what ethics and what moral virtues should bring to those conversations. And you don't have to be a rabid churchgoer to start to think maybe there's something a little dangerous about this technology. And then AI, I think, has just brought this to a new and developing level because of the way that technology is advancing so quickly. And so we're trying to stay on top of that. We're bringing those conversations into the classroom, into our students, into their practicum and workspaces, so that they can think through not just the moral implications, but how they can be professionally trained to use that technology well.
Oh, did you cut out? Or I cut out?
Did you
One
catch
of
me?
us cut out.
Did you hear my answer? Or no?
I heard your answer, and then I was pausing there. Many times with a podcast, what you do on Zoom, you hit these moments where there's just a delay, and I'm like, wow, that was pretty profound. I didn't know if you were going to come with something else, but I paused for silence to have it hit.
Yeah.
When we talk about your leadership too, you came in during 21, right?
Yeah,
like July
that's right.
of 21.
Yep.
Which was an ideal time to start a college presidency, right? If you're going to pick a time period in the history of higher ed, you'd pick right in the middle of COVID to become a college president.
Right.
You've seen from that time, you've seen people leave, people come back, online, on ground, what's important in higher ed, what's not, the transition, maybe the elasticity of the industry once we respond to a crisis to maybe move backwards to what we knew beforehand, and some who've innovated beyond it. What are the lessons learned coming in during that time? Fast forward now, we're in 2025. What do you take from that time coming in as a new president, 21 to now? What's important? What, you know what I mean? Like COVID showed us what was really important in an educational model, and what parts do we embrace it with change? Tough question, but you've seen it. You were in it.
Well, right. And 5 years hence, we've been able to look back and have a little more time to absorb some of those lessons. I mean, it did teach us all, especially in the kind of small liberal arts model, it did teach us that we are capable of utilizing technology in ways that we may have kind of dug in our heels and resisted. Everywhere I've worked has mostly been small and Christian and liberal arts oriented. And so even though we had online programs, there's always a little bit of a hesitation to it. So we learned how to do that. But we also learned the real value of an incarnational model for the classroom and for the lived experience. And, at Gordon College, we always believe that learning doesn't exclusively take place in the classroom. It takes place on our campus and in the athletic arena and in the locker rooms and in music practice rooms and behind the stage at our theater productions. And so that learning and even the spiritual learning that takes place joined together with that is something really rich. And so even though we did some great work and our faculty did great work to move a lot of our classes online, it actually pointed out the real value of what we do in that lived community space. At the same time, we've continued to embrace technology. We continue to use it. But we really value the way that we live it out. And so it's even caused us to reshape some of our campus experience pieces. I found coming here in 21, as you mentioned, and then going through COVID, which the COVID restrictions in New England lasted a little longer, probably a year past the rest of the country. And so we really had to reset and refashion what community looked like here at Gordon. And so we launched an initiative called Faith, Learning, and Living, where our learning experiences and our faith opportunities for spiritual growth and spiritual formation were really reshaped and restructured. And it's been very successful. Students have responded to that, and it's made a difference in their lives, not only here on campus, but as they launched into their careers. So I think there's a lot that we've learned about it, but to your point earlier, it reinforces the incarnational model for what we do, living our lives together and having those learning experiences day in and day out.
When people talk about reimagining a campus experience or student success, some of those words we use them interchangeably. I think they all mean something different, but what is that? What is that? The campus experience? Is that space? Is it engagement from the faculty and administration to the students? What part of it did you go, you know what, we got to reimagine how X, Y, or Z works? Because so we conflate these things so much. Oh, we got to work on the student experience. And it's like, well, were we talking about technology and the way a student applies? Are we talking about how they access the courses? Are we talking about alumni engagement? What were those specific pieces where you saw the ability for the institution to move forward?
Well, for us here at Gordon, our mission statement says that Gordon strives to graduate men and women distinguished by intellectual maturity and Christian character, committed to lives of service and prepared for leadership worldwide. So that service and leadership piece, again, that's very familiar language. Most of our missions have that type of language in it, most college mission statements. But we really believe that our students need to cultivate lives that are whole persons, thinking about learning throughout their lives, thinking about the way that they grow more in the image of Jesus Christ throughout their lives. And so we don't want that to kind of be a dichotomy, even while they're here on campus, that you only do spiritual growth in chapel services, you only do learning in the classroom. And so we are really, when we talk about student experience, we want them to have a lot of fun. We want them to enjoy each other. We want them to learn in community, but to practice that type of an approach to life so that when they graduate and they go on to live out that mission in service and leadership worldwide, that they are the kind of people, if you work in an office, they're the kind of person that is interesting, that they take great interest in what other people are doing in their lives. They show compassion for others. They value others' experience over their own. And those elements are not always what we think of when we think about student success. Sometimes student success is just how do you get to the top of the heap, and how do you make your own professional success? How do you make sure you earn the most coming out of college and your first year out? And those are all good goals to pursue, but those goals without being tethered to some more goals for the common good, without being tethered to goals for community, without being tethered to goals that are service oriented, are ultimately going to be empty. And again, you don't have to be a Christian to believe that, but you know, the virtues of Jesus Christ would tell us that it's not just about your own personal success at the expense of everyone around you. And I think that message, while it's always been countercultural or always been provocative, you know, we're in an era today where maybe there's more of a leaning towards selfishness or more of a leaning towards materialism that would point to student success only being that sort of monetary output. And so we are really measuring what we do in more than one metric. You know, it's not just in financial success right out of college. We're proud of that. We're proud of our 94% placement rate in the first year. There's great things we can talk about, but we're really proud that we live out this mission. And even Gordon's mission for student success has always been about access. So when school was founded in 1889, downtown Boston, A.J. Gordon was the founder, and he didn't name it for himself. It was named for him upon his death. But he wanted to form a school. He had been Ivy League educated, had great theological credentials, was a pastor of an influential church in Boston. And he found that people in his church who were without financial means, some of them were people of color, some of them were women, some of them were people who had physical handicaps. They were denied access to education. And after being frustrated about this for many years, he started his own school. And he said, I'm going to take anybody who has this desire to learn and has a desire to again, take this idea of service to the world. And he called it preparing the people of God for the work of God. And that simple way of thinking about what we do is still what animates our mission. So student success for us has often been not just bringing elite students in, making sure they stay elite and then have elite careers. That's great. But we actually try to bring in students of all kinds of backgrounds who have a sense of calling and have a sense of purpose. And we try to equip them so that they can go out and achieve their calling in the world in ways that are very fulfilling, because the success is not just about their financial success.
I love what you're saying to students.
You just made the list.
Right. What you're saying is really important to me. I've talked about it on this podcast a million times. And that we're in this land of the value of a degree. And there's a lot of, conjecture around it. There's a social media movement sort of against the college degree. And you can see that how, a lot of social media posts will say something like, learn more from these 4 websites than you can within 4 minutes from a 4-year college degree.
Right.
And you go, who the heck is listening to that? But people do. And it's a reason why some people are not entering the college pipeline, is because they're getting information like, oh, go to do this instead. I'm all for going to work and going to college, later, or going to college now and working later, like whatever way somebody gets to college. But what we are doing, and this is my opinion, you tell me where you think I'm right or wrong. We're starting to boil down what is so much greater than financial success with a college degree to exactly that. I'm investing X and my output is Y. That output is never short term. So we're being very short-sighted on even just the financial output, because the college degree in year 1 is not equal to what that college degree gets you in year 18. Right. And we're not measuring that, but we're giving up on or not properly communicating. And that's a big reason why we do this podcast. What the value is beyond financial. It's immeasurable. And nobody goes, you know what, I'd just turn in my college degree right now and get my money back. I just don't hear that. Yeah. What are you hearing from students? Is there an understanding that there's value beyond the financial piece? Or do we have to train them up? Students, parents, is it just a one-sided conversation? Or are you hearing more?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about this, right? So we can, we're educators and we've been in this for a while. But if we're not listening to what students are seeing and what their parents are seeing, then we're missing it. So one element of this is the fact that, this term influencer, right? Students are obsessed with influencers. Some of them want to be influencers. They may actually
they all
this.
want to be influencers. If they could be.
For sure. And we have students even at Gordon who have, thousands, some millions of followers on different platforms. It's crazy to imagine, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that in a way, what social media and some of those networks have done is it's created this alternate stream for education, this alternate stream for even the idea of being a whole person and how you give back and how you share, because you're interacting with your peer group or this cultivated group of people that you may have never met online. So I think for our students, one question they're asking is, if they are engaged in that, how is what they're experiencing in a very traditional classroom sense, in a very traditional, mentoring experience with their professors, how does that actually make a difference in this other world, the online world, right? Because that becomes this check for them. Now, a mature student may say, I roll my eyes at this, online stuff is a little goofy, but it's hard to imagine students of this generation, our traditional college age students and beyond, who've not been influenced by that. And again, their parents are more influenced by Facebook and students are more influenced by TikTok or whatever it is. But the platforms are all a similar means of interacting with ideas. And it shapes the way that our students think about information, the way they process information. There's all these good things to it. We've all been there where there's a household problem or, a broken washing machine or something wrong with the car, and you go to YouTube and 30 seconds later, you found the answer. That's a great thing, right? We all want that. And yet that's not the same as actually being educated in a liberal arts context, to be a whole person who can really interact with the world. And so I think of how do you bridge the gap for those students? How do you bridge the gap between what we would say is a really valuable liberal arts experience, infused with real deep spiritual and ethical meaning, and then this world that we can all roll our eyes and say, well, that's just goofy. But the reality is it has such power and such allure, and oftentimes is dictating the way that we process information. Our politics today are being funneled through social media, so much so that traditional media outlets are dying off.
Yeah.
The social media now is ruling. It creates this direct pathway, and it creates this really important existential and I think ethical and moral question about how do we know what is true anymore. And so our students, they may not come to college asking that question, but I want them to be so curious about that question during their college experience that when they graduate, they're pairing together what they learned in our classrooms with what they're experiencing with whatever social media or whatever media is today. And God help us what it'll be in 20 years or 10 years. But if they can still be animated by that question to say, well, wait a second, how do I know what's true? What are the virtues that I have in my heart and in my life and in the world around me that help me discern what truth is? That to me is where our students are rising up to that. And that's what we hope by the time they finish their Gordon experience, that they have grown deeper in their faith. They've gone deeper in their awareness of the world around them, which essentially in Christian virtue is the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. We sometimes call it the golden rule. And if you do that in a way that's trying to be aware of this world of ideas and the ideas of all time that matter and the ideas of the moment that may or may not matter, if you can discern and bridge the gap between the two, I think you've acquired some wisdom that can help you navigate the world.
Epic.
There's such a good point in there about the evolution of information processing. It's like we've been teaching research. We all took research courses for our dissertation and all this, and it's like the evolution is sifting. How it's not hard to research, especially with artificial intelligence, and you can research 100 times faster. I mean, gosh darn it, I going through all those links and reading the discussion summaries of every one of those things. And now I can just go to an AI program and it gives me the 4 articles that match the discussion summary that I'm looking for. It's actually pretty insane. But how do I know, especially since so much more is electronically written, maybe not as peer reviewed, what's real and what's not? How do I even tell if if a press release on social media is real or not. There's lots of stuff out there that seems real and then it's a hoax. And so how to critically think through what I am willing to accept is information that's relevant to me and that it's valid, and sift through the junk is a skill. That's going to be a skill, right? Because it's really easy to just believe everything that's thrown at you. And when you talk about it the way you were, I mean, that's such an important part of an education, is to help teach us to sift.
Mark your calendars now for February 17th to the 19th, 2026. Because if you miss this, you'll be playing catch up all year. This is the future unbound and the most important higher ed marketing and enrollment management conference of 2026. Insights EDU is taking over Fort Lauderdale, where Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top institutions nationwide will pull back the curtain on what's next. Are you ready to adapt or be left behind? Insights EDU 2026 is where leaders become game changers. Register now at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025.
Yeah, well, and I think that's particularly important in moral education or even in the humanities. And so if you're a literature major or a history major, why do you take so many seminars? It's not because there's just one answer to these questions, right? So I was a historian, taught in the classroom for many years, and there's one view of history that can be a little exhausting to think about, but that history is an argument without end, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we can disabuse ourselves of the notion that learning history, just as an example, is just about acquiring knowledge of dates and facts and names, right? If that's the case, why are there thousands and thousands of books written on the same topic? It's because there are different ways to perspectivize that particular event. There's different ways to focus on the lived experience of people who went through it in their moment, in their time. And learning in the humanities and moral learning is about practicing. You can kind of compare it to physical training. It's about practicing the discernment necessary to analyze those texts, to think critically about them, and you kind of develop your muscles. You get in shape. And if we're only using AI to say what happened on this date in 1775, we're celebrating the 250th anniversary here in New England of the American Revolution. So what happened on that event? And you can say, well, there was a battle at Lexington and Concord in April, and this army attacked the other army, and that was the result of the battle. That's some facts about it. But why does it matter? Why is it significant? What are the different ways to analyze the battlefield maneuvers of those two generals? Why did that battle take place and then no battles followed it immediately? How did people get there? There's all these curiosity questions that AI may or may not be able to answer. And of course, this isn't even getting into the ways that AI fail. I mean, there's great, I follow a Twitter account that's, AI failures. Just, when people enter a query and it's so mistakenly giving you this answer that makes no sense. And it's fun to follow that. Yeah, it's fun just to follow it. But the reality is the technology is getting better and better. And so those failures are not going to be as common. And yet I still think the deficiency of that type of technology is going to draw us back to the practice, building those muscles of discernment and building those muscles of wisdom that can actually couple moral reasoning with discerning the right answer.
How do you rationalize, implement the idea of artificial intelligence and technology into curriculum? Because there is this delicate balance that we have to have as humans. And then you look at it implemented within higher ed, and it's a little bit different than other industries. If you just look at a normal business that produces a widget, you're driving AI for efficiency. When you add in teaching and learning, it's just another, you have parents, you have students, you have alumni, you have the faculty, sometimes they're union or tenured. There's so many opinions, to your point, on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Tell me about Gordon College, what you're doing, what you're not doing, how you think about AI, who's on board, who's not. Give us as much as you can give us.
Yeah, I think even just to the point of how quickly this is advancing and evolving, when ChatGPT was introduced just a few years ago, the immediate reaction from higher ed was, "Oh, this is going to cause students to cheat on their essays and to shortcut that." And yet plagiarism was not the biggest challenge here. And we're learning that. Like in real time, we're seeing that, okay, this is actually a little different. And I think we've maybe hopefully overcome some of those initial fears about this just being a cheating tool and realizing, I think across the curriculum here at Gordon, realizing how much we need to equip our students to use AI as a tool. I use this little illustration, which may or may not be helpful, but historically, I think back to the post-World War II in the 20th century in the United States. Most people know the 1950s, this time of the rise of the suburbs and the rise of automation, and it eventually gives rise to the feminist movement. And one of the ways that it did that was that it created shortcuts for the kind of work that needed to be done in the home. One of those, starting in the 1950s and moving on, was things like shortcuts in the kitchen. So Betty Crocker mixes and cake mixes come out, and these sort of instant meals and TV dinners, and eventually the microwave oven comes around in the 60s and 70s. And you would have thought, kind of like the Jetsons, that we would no longer really have cultivated prepared meals. We would just press a button, just add water, you've got a great meal for you. And yet, anyone who's eaten a TV dinner or eaten a microwavable meal will tell you how unsatisfying that is when you're really hungry and you want good food. And
That's
reality is, these are shortcuts. These are technological shortcuts that are going to make our lives easier, just getting us to the end result. And if AI is about just getting us to the end result, here's the answer I need, that's fine. If microwave ovens and TV dinners were just about getting you some kind of food you could throw in your mouth, that's fine. And yet we still pay a premium for the chef and the sous chef and the pastry chef at the wonderful restaurant that has Michelin stars on its door, because they can do this at a much better level. And then in the same way, I think there will always be a need for moral reasoning and philosophy, and those that can not just get you to the right answer, but can actually have the depth of experience and depth of wisdom and knowledge to tell you why that answer might be correct, but flawed from a humanistic standpoint. Or that might be the right answer in terms of the facts, but you're missing the rest of the story because the question you asked to prompt the AI was actually not the right question. Mm-hmm. You needed a question that was more rooted in a moral dilemma, because the great lessons of our lifetime and the great moral challenges we have of today have to be informed by the length and breadth of experience that even an AI major language model can't always capture. And that's what we're all seeing. That's what we're all learning in real time.
Yeah, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to Dad Salustio, who did lay a few TV dinners on me. Shout out to Salisbury Steak.
Yes.
But your point's well taken, and it's funny because it gives us I feel like everything you talked about gives us a chance to reimagine how. Maybe instead of focusing so much on the output, right? That's what we've done. Here's an assignment, do all the stuff you need to do, and I'm going to look at the output and I'm going to give you a grade or assess it. To the input, what are the 5 to 10 steps you went through to try to generate this result, right? And it's that input that's where the critical thinking is. The critical thinking is really moved from the middle to the beginning in a lot of ways because of artificial intelligence. And if we start to look at the inputs and the number of ways that we can think critically to create, to get to an end result, that it's almost like we have to have the end result in mind before we start the process, then the learning is more upfront versus in the middle. And that's what I have seen, who I've talked to, the input versus the output is the way that we're moving now as we learn, right? Because then you can assess your own output by looking at your own inputs. And that's what prompt generation almost is, to your point.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. For years in my classrooms, when I would work with students on one of their major research essays, I would often tell them, before you get to the writing, don't miss how important it is to choose the right topic and to choose the right sources that you're going to go to for research, because ultimately you're going to box yourself in if you don't think critically at that stage. Sometimes it's the research sources that you have available, and there's more and more available these days. But sometimes the choice of topic is an important question that I think for undergrads especially, they may just say, I just need to choose a topic, so I'll just do this. And it's the really wise student that thinks critically, does a little reflection and research, and figures out, actually, here's the important, compelling question I need to write about. We're at risk to your point, we're at risk if we lean on AI too heavily of that whole part of the process being removed, that we're not even really thinking about the prompts. We're only thinking about, what gets spit out at the end, the text that gets spit out on the page and say, well, I have something finished. AI helped me get there. And again, I'm not saying we can't use AI. There's ways to do it. But if we educate our students to think critically about those prompts, as you suggest, if we think critically about how we choose the topic, so to speak, then we'll start to use those tools in a better way, richer way.
I go through and I look at stuff. Just one more question for you before we wrap up. But in your bio, it's you go through and it says that you all your teaching and experience, and then you quote academic side of the house, that you came from the academic side of the house, and you quote it as if, the way I read it, as if to say, this is such a cliche statement to make. We say that if you work in higher ed and you have not uttered the words, they're on the administrative side of the house or they're on the academic side of the house, then you haven't worked in higher ed. You probably could work in higher ed for 2 months and hear somebody say that. It is so common. And it's such garbage to the statement, the way that we say it, to make it sound so divided. Like we're, that these things, when you become a college president, there's only one house. And you got to make it all work. And I just love the way you phrased it in your bio that, kind of came from the academic. Why did you say it like that? And what does it mean to you to come from that part of the business now to take over as a college president, and the way you look at things?
Well, I would say it this way, Joe, like yourself, I worked a lot of different sides of the street, so to speak, in higher ed before I was a professor. So I worked with student leadership. Yeah. I was a residence hall director. I've worked in admissions. I've done a lot of those tasks. And I would say that at each of those stops, I thought of the work that I was doing ultimately as about learning, as about student learning, as supporting the learning process. And even, again, being a residence hall director, if you're really good at that work, you're engaging regularly in conversations with students about the deepest of deep questions, because they're trusting you and they're bringing this to you. They don't always take those to their professors. And some of those are the residue of what's happening in the classroom in really good ways. And now they're trying to process it in context for how it applies to their real life. And so, if I put that in quotes, I agree with you. There's not multiple sides of the house or the street or whatever. We're all about this same beautiful mission. And so I've always seen every piece of work that I've ever done has been about how we create ways to fulfill that mission. And it ultimately for us it's resolved in the classroom, out of the classroom. It's all about learning. And even as president, I try to get in the classroom regularly. I try to team teach, or if not teach classes, because it just brings me such joy. And I think it keeps my mind sharp on why it is we do what we do. It's so important.
Also, I think it keeps you humble, right? If you really want to, if your ego just gets a little too big, not you, anybody walk into a classroom and you would be brought back down to reality really fast.
That's really true. Yeah. No matter your credentials or your title, you're the president, fine. But they're going to wait to show. And I always believe this adage that they're not going to care how much you know till they know how much you care. And so some of that's about the relationship with the students and showing them, here's why I do what I do, and then learning from them why they're there. And that gives some opportunity to learn together. So,
before we bring you back for a subscriber-only episode that we'll have after this, we want to find out a little bit more about leadership and what you see for the future of higher ed. I do want to ask you, to close this main episode, what else do you want to tell us about Gordon College? Is there anything else that we should have covered that didn't cover? Anything else going on well or good that you want to talk about? Open mic.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. We've really worked hard in the last year, especially to restructure our academic approach, to really be keen toward innovation, toward partnerships in the New England and Northeast area, and it's gone really well, been very successful. We're really, being the only Christian liberal arts college in the Northeast, we really believe that mission has great implications for us. I love that we're a school that's still investing in the arts and music and performing arts and visual arts, as well as business and health technology and science. So we are truly liberal arts, and yet innovation is pushing us to do that in ways that are true to our mission, but creative and changing every year. So love our faculty, love the great work that they've done to lead in that effort, and our team here is so energized by what we get to do. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, everybody. He's a man, he's a myth, and he's a legend. Check out more about Gordon College. You can Google it. They'll come right up. Great mission, and doing great work, and we're happy to highlight him, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Joe.
He's Dr. Michael Hammond. He's president of Gordon College, and you just EdUp'd.
Shake up your marketing and enrollment strategy. Join us at Insights EDU, February 17th to the 19th, 2026 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a beachfront experience and the best higher education marketing and enrollment management conference. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025. Register now at insightsedu.com. The future unbound is at Insights EDU 2026.